Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into a really wild theory. What if I told you your DNA isn't just a simple chemical blueprint for your body? What if it's actually a super advanced biocomputer that can communicate using waves of light and sound? Let's get into it.
All right, let's jump right in with the big question that sits at the very heart of this whole thing. For decades, mainstream biology has had this idea that most of our genetic code, a whopping 98% of it, is just junk DNA. But what if that's completely wrong? What if that so-called junk is actually the most important, most powerful part of our entire genome?
So, to really get what's going on with this new theory, we first have to understand the old one. It's called the central dogma of genetics, and it's basically the idea that DNA is just a physical thing, a material substance. Only a tiny little 2% slice of it actually codes for proteins, the building blocks of life. And the other 98%? Well, that's been dismissed as non-functional, a kind of genetic junkyard full of old evolutionary leftovers and ancient viruses.
But, and this is a big but, the researchers behind this wave genetics theory say, hold on a minute, they argue that the old model just can't explain some really strange and apparently well-documented experimental results. These anomalies, they believe, are pointing to something much, much bigger going on with our DNA.
Okay, so first up, we've got something called the DNA phantom effect. This is wild. Researchers, in both Russia and the US by the way, would put a DNA sample into a machine, a laser spectrometer, and get a reading, totally normal. But then they'd take the physical DNA sample out, and the machine would keep getting a reading as if the DNA was still there. A phantom trace, an echo of the DNA, just lingered in the machine.
And this chart kind of shows you what that looks like. You've got your normal background reading, then a big spike with the DNA sample inside. But look at that third bar. Even after the sample is gone, there's still a signal. And get this, the researchers reported that they could try to blow the phantom away with nitrogen gas, and it would just come right back within minutes. And it could stick around for up to a month.
And this wasn't just some weird fluke with the lab machine. A very similar thing was seen in biology, with something called the phantom leaf effect. So imagine you take a living leaf and you cut a piece of it off. Then you take the remaining part of the leaf and you put it in a special high-frequency field. An image of the entire leaf appears, including a glowing holographic phantom of the part you just cut off. It's like the leaf remembers its whole self, its complete energy field.
And the list of these strange results just keeps going. The people behind this theory point to all sorts of unexplained stuff. For instance, the mirror effect, where a disease in a totally sealed-off dish of cells seems to magically infect another sealed dish nearby. Or fish embryos in separate tanks influencing each other's development. There's even a report of a plant tumor being reprogrammed into a healthy plant just by shining a hologram of a healthy plant onto it. All of this points to information being sent and received with no physical connection we can see.
So, you've got all these phantoms and spooky, distant connections. How in the world do you explain them? Well, the proponents of this theory say you can't, unless you totally rethink what DNA is. They propose a completely new way of looking at genetics, a true paradigm shift.
And this table really nails the difference. The old way, classical genetics, sees DNA as just physical stuff, with that 98% being junk. But wave genetics? It says DNA is both matter and an energy informational field. That 98% isn't junk at all, it's a supercode. And it means our genome isn't just a blueprint, it's a biocomputer that can work non-locally, using these holographic wave-based fields.
So this whole new theory is really built on a few core ideas. First, that 98% junk DNA is really a supercode that works at a wave level. Second, that our genome is actually a kind of intelligent or quasi-intelligent system. Third, this wave-level code is what organizes everything about us, our entire structure in space and time. And finally, and this is a big one, genetic information isn't just chemical. It can actually be sent and received as waves of sound and light.
All right, so all of this builds up to this incredible idea of the genome acting like a super sophisticated thinking computer. And this is where the theory, for me, gets really, really interesting.
The proponents of this theory make a fascinating point. Our genetic language has words that can mean more than one thing, like homonyms in English. Think of the word bat. Is it a flying animal or a piece of baseball equipment? You need context to know, right? Well, they argue that for our genome to pick the right protein to build every single time, it has to understand the context of the entire genetic sentence. And that, they say, implies a kind of consciousness, a quasi-intelligence happening right there at the molecular level. Okay, so this is a really cool theory, but is there any proof?
Well, this is where the researchers put their ideas to the ultimate test. They set up a pretty remarkable experiment to see if they could actually use this wave information to heal a deadly condition in rats.
So look at this. The setup is pretty straightforward. Both groups of rats were given a poison that completely destroys the pancreas. Now the control group, as you'd expect, all developed diabetes and died pretty quickly. But the test group, they were then exposed to wave information that was recorded from a healthy pancreas just by scanning it with a laser. And the result they reported? The rat's pancreas is regenerated, their blood sugar went back to normal, and they completely recovered.
And we're not talking about a 1 in a million fluke here. They ran 3 different sets of experiments in Russia and even in Canada. And the success rate they claimed was, get this, around 90%. That's an incredible number. 90% of the rats in those test groups supposedly had their pancreas restored just by being exposed to this wave information.
But just when you think it can't get any wilder, it does. Because in some of these experiments, the researchers claim they successfully sent this healing information to the sick rats over a distance of up to 20 kilometers. I mean, think about that. That's over 12 miles. This completely challenges our fundamental understanding of physics. It suggests some kind of information transfer that is truly beyond what we currently know.
So let's just take a step back and ask, what would all this mean if it's true? Well, according to the authors of this theory, it would blow the doors wide open on a whole new frontier of technology, with applications that honestly sound like they are straight out of a science fiction movie.
The potential they imagine is just staggering. We're talking about everything from creating artificial memory on DNA molecules with unbelievable storage capacity, to building entirely new kinds of biocomputers, to remote healing for diseases like cancer, and even, believe it or not, using our own DNA as a kind of biological antenna for communicating with life beyond Earth.
And that really leaves us with this final, provocative thought to chew on. The theory of wave genetics suggests our DNA is not some isolated code locked away in our cells. Instead, it's an antenna, constantly sending and receiving information. So if it really can transmit healing information across 20 kilometers, it just forces you to ask, what else and who else out there in the universe are we connected to?